Somewhere I Belong, Chapter 6, Part 2. Sure, see you later, he said as he quickly walked away from the farm, with his blush still present. Applejack went into the farmhouse and laid on her bed. She pulled her hat tight over her face and grunted in frustration. "Damn you, hormones," she said as she chewed on the brim. As Isaac passed the final apple tree and made his way down the road, he noticed a pair of yellow eyes forming on the tree and a smug grin creep across the bark. Isaac made his way past the edge of town and into a small cutout of the forest. He laid back onto a tree that was next to a crystal blue pool. He looked into the small pool to see fish swimming around in it. Isaac's stomach let out a growl of hunger. He had an idea and began collecting some wood. He withdrew his knife and sharpened the tip of a nearby stick. He rolled up his pants to his knees and removed his shoes as he stepped into the water. He remained still as he saw some fish inspect his feet. He let out a small breath and rammed the sharpened stick through one of the fish. "Success! Good thing I took that hunting class," he said as he stepped out of the water and laid the fish down on a leaf. He withdrew his knife to reveal a small bit of flint and steel. He began to press the two together to ignite the small bit of kindling. He eventually had a fire going and started to roast the fish over the open fire. He let out a yawn as he sat back against a rock and waited for his meal to finish cooking. He looked up to see a familiar cyan mare rocketing towards him. "Hey," she said as she landed next to him. "Hey, Rainbow," he said as he smiled at the mare. "What are you doing?" she asked as she looked at the fire. "I'm about to have lunch," he said as he took the fish off the stick and laid it on a clean leaf. He withdrew his knife and removed the head and scales. Rainbow put a hand to her mouth, trying to cover her disgust. "Sorry, but humans need meat." "Yeah, Twilight told me," she said with a gulp. Isaac started to cut the meat off the fish and put the pieces into his mouth. "I may not be a master chef, but I cook a mean fish. I'd offer you some, but since you're a vegetarian," he said as he lifted another piece to his mouth. "Where did you get that anyway?" Isaac pointed to the pool of water. The mare looked at him in surprise. "How did you catch it?" "With the spear I made," he said as he raised the sharpened stick. "Where did you learn to do something like that?" "I took a class on wilderness survival. They teach you how to take care of yourself if you're ever stranded in the wilderness," he said as he took another bite from the fish. "Could you teach me?" "To what?" "To fish." "Why? You're a vegetarian." "I know, but let's say there are no edible plants around and I have to eat something. Plus, I want to see how you caught that thing," she said as she looked at the remains of the fish. "Fine, but I'm warning you, it won't be easy," he said as he got to his feet. He took his shoes off and stepped into the water. He motioned Dash to hand him the spear. She complied and handed the implement to the human, who stood as still as a statue. "What are you waiting for? They're right there." He brought the spear down and impaled the fish through the neck. He picked it up out of the water and showed it to the cyan mare, who looked at him in amazement. He laid the fish on the rock and opened the fish's insides. "What are you doing?" "I need to clean the fish before I can eat it," he said as he shoved his hand inside the fish and removed the guts. Rainbow turned away from the scene. "Yeah, this is the grossest part of the job." The human put the fish on a stick, leaning into the flames. "You need to make sure that the fish is cooked. The fire gets all the bacteria the fish may have inside of it because you don't know if the water is clean or not. That's rule number 1. Make sure the source is clean," he said as the fire crackled as the fluids from the animal dripped into the fire. "Once the fish has been cooked, you're ready to eat," he said as he removed the skin and took a bite from it. "Okay, so how about I try to catch one using the spear?" "Be my guest," he said as he handed her the tool. Rainbow removed her shoes and stepped into the water. A small chill ran up her spine as the cold water touched her coat. This is impossible," she yelled in frustration. "This takes time and practice. It took years of practice for me to get this good." Isaac stood up and walked behind the mare and took her arm in his hands. "Hold the spear so it doesn't cast a shadow, and be ready to strike at a moment's notice." Rainbow blushed at the human's fingers on her coat. He took her arm holding the spear and raised it over the water. "Stay there for a second," he said as he got out of the water and walked over to a bush. He pulled a leaf off and returned to the mare, still holding the position. He put the leaf down in the water and watched it float in front of them. "Try hitting the leaf." Rainbow nodded and threw the spear at the leaf, which missed by 5 inches. "Ugh," she said as she kicked the water. She then lost her balance and fell into the pool. "Smooth, Dash," he said with a smug grin spread across his face. Yeah, help me up," she said as she outstretched a hand. Isaac grabbed it and felt himself being pulled into the water. He looked at the mare, who was laughing at his situation. "I can't believe you fell for that." "Laugh it up. You're lucky I took my phone and pea pot out of my pocket," he said as he got to his feet. Now I gotta dry this or Rarity will kill me, he said as he took his shirt off and laid it down by the fire. Rainbow blushed at the human's upper body and got out of the water. What's with your wings? What? Isaac pointed at her wings, which were standing at full attention. Oh crap, I'm airing them out. I need to do that whenever they get wet. Oh, I see, he said as he leaned against a nearby tree. Rainbow took her shirt off and laid it next to his. He noticed that she was wearing a small sleeveless black shirt that was cut off mid-stomach. The fabric clung to her wet body, outlining her attractive features. Isaac averted his eyes away from the mare and felt the warm sun beginning to dry his body. Rainbow was trying to force her wings down, but they remained stiff as a board. What's wrong? My wings won't go down, she said as she tugged on the appendages. Need some help? Rainbow's face turned crimson. I'm assuming that the muscles are locked in place, right? You could do that? I've taken a few massage classes, haven't gotten a complete sense. Rainbow's mind was racing with the thought of the human's fingers running through her feathers. Rainbow nodded and sat in front of the human. Isaac cracked his fingers and began to lightly press on the mare's wings. Rainbow let out a surprised gasp. Too hard? No, keep going, she said as she began to lightly pant. Isaac continued applying pressure to her wings. As he moved to the tips, the mare let out a light squeak, in surprise. As he rolled his fingers at the tips of her wings, Rainbow could feel her wings stiffen to their fullest extent. Rainbow felt her face turning bright red, and felt her whole body heat up. Rainbow moved closer to him, so that her tail was brushing against his lap. Isaac felt his member begin to harden. He started to move back towards the center of the mare's wings, and began to work in between the appendages. At this point, Rainbow's tongue was hanging out of her mouth, and soft moans of pleasure began to escape her lips. Right there, she said in a weak voice. Isaac began to press his thumbs into the pressure point. Rainbow let out a cry of pleasure as the human increased his pressure and speed. Rainbow's breathing increased, and she tilted her head back, allowing the warm sun to hit her face. Her wings let out a single vibration and went limp against her back. Rainbow began to slow her breathing. She looked back at the human, to see that his cheeks were tinted red. She quickly got to her feet and put her dry shirt back on. Thanks, she said as she tried to hide her blush. No problem. Can we keep this between us? She said in a nervous tone. Sure, I guess, he said in confusion. Thanks. I gotta go. Think you could give me a hand with the fire? He said as he pointed at the bed of coals. The last thing I need is a forest fire on my hands. Rainbow nodded and pulled a small storm cloud down from the sky. She kicked it, and a small downpour extinguished the bed of coals. Thanks. I better get out of here soon, too. Why? The smell from the fish has probably attracted every animal in the area and are probably closing in on us, he said as he looked around. Rainbow nodded and took flight away from the human. Isaac looked down to see that his pants had pitched a tent. He quickly jabbed himself in the thigh with his fist, causing the tent to slowly collapse. What was that about just being friends? Shut up, it was circumstantial, nothing more. Sure it was. You're getting too attached to these things. Shut up, he thought as he packed up the second fish he caught in a clean leaf. Isaac made his way back to the small town. As he walked away from the smoldering fire, a few coals started to move into the shape of a sly smile. He came across a small cottage and a familiar yellow Pegasus, with some small animals standing around her. Oh, it's Fluttershy, yeah, that's it. As she saw him approach, she cringed back in fear. Hey, he said as he threw on a weak smile. She gave no response and started to tremble. Look, I know that you're scared that I might try to eat one of your animal friends, but I won't. Really? Yes, I may be a meat eater, but I can control myself when I need to, he said as he shrugged. I'm sorry, she said in a timid voice. It's all right. I realize you're still getting used to me being here and all, he said as he scratched his head. Your name's Fluttershy, right? Yes. And you're Isaac, right? The human nodded. He noticed that the small animals began to scurry around Fluttershy and that a small white rabbit was tugging at her tail. Oh, I need to give Barry his medicine, she said as she began to follow the rabbit. The mare quickly turned to the human with a shy look in her eyes. I'm sorry to ask this, and feel free to say no. Could you help me with Barry? He can be quite a handful sometimes. Sure, lead the way, he said as he followed the mare. She walked up to a cage. Isaac's eyes shrank as he saw a massive brown bear with a wound on its left leg. Fluttershy, that's a fully grown bear. Yeah, his name's Barry, she said with a smile. Seriously? So what's wrong with him? He got stung by a manticore. I need to give him an antidote, she said as she pulled out a pill the size of a quarter. He hates medicine, though. I need to give it to him so he can get better. How do you plan on doing that? I'll ask him first, and then the bear let out a roar as he saw the pill. Okay, then I guess that won't work. Isaac suddenly had an idea. Hang on, give me the pill. Fluttershy looked at the human with a raised eyebrow. Isaac pulled out the other fish he caught and stuffed the pill inside the fish and grinned. Okay, open the cage. Fluttershy complied and opened the door. All right, pal, I got a big juicy fish here for you, he said as he showed the bear the drugged fish. The bear walked up to him and sniffed at the human. Isaac wrapped his right hand around the knife handle. As the bear smelt the fish, the bear took it from his hand and began to eat the drugged fish. Isaac motioned for Fluttershy to open the door. She quickly complied and opened the cage. Isaac slowly backed away from the bear and exited the cage. He let out a heavy sigh as he sat down on the ground. That was wonderful. How'd you know what to do? Whenever my dog got sick, I wrapped the pill in peanut butter and he ate it right up. Oldest trick in the book, he said with a smirk. Where did you get that fish? You shouldn't ask questions you don't want to know the answer to, he said in a nervous tone. Good point, she said in a nervous voice. You mentioned you had a dog. What's its name? Scout. His name was Scout. He's in a better place now, he said in a low tone. Fluttershy instantly wrapped her wing around him. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have asked, she said as she looked down. It's fine. Was he a good dog? The best. Was always sniffing around, searching for stuff, he said with a laugh. He was a bit of an idiot, but he was my idiot. Fluttershy put a hand on his shoulder and gave him a weak smile. Well, I'll let you get back to work, Isaac said as he got to his feet.